Should we jump in?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Cool. Right, so thanks everyone for joining us on what is one of the most ridiculously hot days of the year so far. Just to introduce myself, I'm Chris McGowan. I head up Burnshire and Manchester office, where we cover Northwest right through to Yorkshire. We're a tech recruitment business we like to think we're heavily embedded in the tech community here. Normally, we actually do run regular meetup groups. As you can imagine, that's not really possible at the moment. So we obviously flipped to webinars, but that's also allowed me to get our first in a series that I'd like to do on startup stories. I want to create a platform for helping growing businesses get their voice out there into what is a busy market and is often dominated by certain players in that market. So hopefully we can get people like Michael, who I'm about to introduce you, to share their experience, hopefully inspire others. And also just let the tech community out there hear from other companies and hear that there are different businesses out there. So, so like I say, first up, got Michael Brennan with me today from Tootoot, who's here to tell us our story. So thanks for just...
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you. Do you want to just do a quick intro for yourself, a bit about yourself, Tootoot and I guess Stripe as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Good evening, all. I'm Michael Brennan. I'm the co-founder and CEO of a wonderful organization called Tootoot Limited. Tootoot started as the world's first reporting platform and app for children and young people. I was bullied very, very heavily throughout primary and secondary school throughout Essex, and found it very, very difficult to report my concerns that didn't help me to resolve those issues. And those issues actually affected my mental health and well-being. So I wanted to find a way to help young people to voice those concerns at the earliest opportunity. I relocated from Essex to Berwick-upon-Tweed in the complete other end of the country, and had a wonderful head teacher called Steve Quinlan. And I wanted to create the world's first peer mentoring scheme to help your children and young people to speak up. And therefore, off the back of that, moving to university, realized that there was no technology platform in the education space that focused on the voice of the child. There was great platforms like CPOMs and My Concerns in Education that was focusing on the recording and the incidents when the issue happened, but wasn't anything to drive early intervention, whether that be from well-being, bullying, or concerns. And that journey started 5 years ago. And throughout that journey as well, we introduced 2 other products. In the middle was Tootoot Sport. Again, from a welfare point of view, helping young players, professional players, to voice any welfare concerns that were affecting their own well-being or their own colleagues and sports stars. We have some incredible sport partners ranging from the Scottish FA to Celtic to the Junior Premier League, to name but a few, and very, very lucky to be working in partnership with those. And most recently, taking all of our learnings and our partnerships that we'll probably talk about in a second, Chris, we've launched a new platform called Stripe, which is about strong teams, strong tribes. We realized with all of our funding partners in employment, so organizations such as Barclays, Wigan Council, and a number of other partners, employees still have well-being concerns, and there was no easy way to truly pulse questions to measure employee well-being engagement in real time as opposed to annual surveys, or enabling employees to voice their concerns confidentially if they need support when they can't do so face-to-face. So the same principle and thread runs through our products. We're a technology company. We've won lots of awards, and I'm very, very lucky that I'm at the helm of our ever-growing ship.
Oh, great. I think before we sort of dive into the hardcore questioning, I just want to give a little bit of a story of how we actually got in contact, really. Proves it's a bit of a small world out there. Obviously, you referenced the SFA there as well. We'll come back to it. But I was listening to, I think it was Supercharged Entrepreneur podcast that you were a guest on. Obviously, thought you came across really well, and you brushed upon some challenges that I wanted to dig a little bit deeper into. It got me curious. So I started watching a few more videos that you'd put out there, and like I say, you'd mentioned one of your clients is the SFA, the Scottish Football Association. Which is funny because that's, if people don't know, my brother works for the SFA. He actually is involved in the child protection team at the SFA. So I messaged my brother, said, have you heard of this product? Have you heard of a guy called Michael Brennan? And he was like, yep, absolutely. I'm the one who's rolling it out at the SFA. When I worked for Basketball England. And I was like, okay, small world. But yeah, my brother's on furlough at the moment, so he's actually not able to get the product fully integrated. There's obviously a lot of football going on as well, but he spoke highly of the product. He just hasn't managed to get it integrated just yet. But I just thought it was a funny little world that we live in. got ourselves in contact and started discussing doing this. But I guess diving into the question, the best place to start is tell us a bit about you and what inspired you to start the business. I think you've touched upon it a little bit above, but do you want to give a depth of information into that?
Yeah, I think ultimately there was a burning passion to be an entrepreneur and a businessman with lots of people that I looked up to, but had absolutely no idea what that meant, what starting a business meant. But one thing that kept coming back to me was there was this kind of passion to help young people to speak up and to support people that may have been in my experience. And despite the number of people that said to me that idea, that concept won't work throughout the kind of schooling years and university, it just did not go away. News stories, press, media was all about children's mental health and well-being and early intervention and spending money once the issues had happened, how could we reduce spend as budgets were decreasing. And I thought, actually, there's nobody providing an app, a very simple concept and one that's quite complicated to get right in terms of rolling that out in the education space. And that started my journey. So in Berwick-upon-Tweed, I effectively worked with my initial school, and then I hustled some local businesses to sponsor the 7 schools in our local area and fund that for a year. And I'm something of a bit of a chancer. I think I like to start at the top of the tree and kind of fall down in anything that I do, because I think that everything's about a conversation and you have to believe in yourself to start that journey. And I reached out to Barclays Bank and the Department for Education at the time, hoping to say I've developed a new platform and not really expecting an answer. And the CEO, Anthony Jenkins, at the time actually responded to that email and passed me to his team, who in turn passed me to the Department for Education team, and a lovely advocate called Pauline Myers drove up the country and came to visit our single school of Berwick Academy using our platform, and thought we had something of real interest. But I still didn't understand what that meant. My best friend and Tootoot's co-founder and CTO, an absolute genius who I mention everywhere, is Kieran Innes. He was in the year below me, and the chap that made sure that all of the teachers had the DVDs they required before they came out, and was the chap that built all of the websites and a bit of an entrepreneur himself. And I shared this concept and idea that I was wanting to build, and he believed in that. And every time I said what I thought, he built this product that lined up. It was quite incredible that it was the perfect product fit. And what he was doing was behind the scenes speaking to schools and speaking to customers and getting that product market fit. And so at that point, we realized there was a much greater opportunity. Again, no experience in kind of the business world, as it were. But we realized that I had 6 weeks between finishing university and getting the first class degree in business, and Kieran looking for a sort of a second job up in Berwick-upon-Tweed. There wasn't a lot of opportunities for us. And we realized we needed to get some funding. We realized we needed to kind of understand how to grow a business. We had a product that was being used. Children were reporting. We had 25 reports in the first 6 months of launching in our school, ranging from friendship issues to preventing suicide, which was emotionally incredible to watch this journey. So you had this impact line of statistics going up and users going up in the early doors of a couple of schools, and also people happy to want to pay for your platform, but we were sort of stuck at that stage. And that was kind of where the journey began, really. That's where I thought, right, I need to think about how I turn this into some form of business and how I get some investment in its form. Bearing in mind that year was 2008 and it was the recession that was around. So that was a really interesting time to start our journey.
That's fair. I mean, one of the things I really want to dive into, and it was one of the main points of curiosity from me on the Supercharged podcast, was really around the comments that you made around previous investment rounds that you've been through and the challenges that you had there. I think what I want to do is get the stories of startup companies out there. And could you tell us a bit about the investment journey and talk us through the stages and the challenges that you went through there?
Yeah, of course I can. So when it was just Kieran and I, it was the only focus was to get some money to get off the ground. So I appreciated that all I needed to do was find some investors, and I was very, very lucky that I reached back out to the Department for Education, who linked me to an organization called Commando Joes. And Commando Joes is made up of an incredible founder called Mike Hamilton, OBE, who provides ex-military personnel into schools, and they were having disclosures. So he, when I met with him, completely understood the need for this tool with 300 schools of his own. But equally, again, I was very lucky that he was backed by a wonderful gentleman and my mentor and Tootoot's previous chairman, Terry Flanagan. Terry Flanagan sits on the social equity fund of Palatine, which at that time I didn't realize he was an incredible businessman that had made a lot of money out of telecoms, but cared about children and young people. And with his FD, Bill Moore, I pitched the idea and the concept of Tootoot in Manchester on the train. And luckily they came back and they offered to drive back up to a place called Slaley Hall in the northeast. I don't think Terry had ever been that far north before. I think he thought kind of Hull was as north as he needed to go. So he still tells that story today. And effectively we met and we discussed the opportunities, and they'd done some wonderful research, but there was some real synergy in what we were trying to do with that organization and themselves. And we had asked for a lot more funding than kind of we received at the start, because we had 7 schools and a concept, and we were 2 young lads. One was sweeping greens in his part time, one was soldering computers. But they believed that we had a chance of our passion and what we were trying to deliver. So they invested in us as our kind of very first proof of concept. Very, very quickly, I suppose for anybody that's listening about starting a business, you have to be wedded to the journey. So you have to be prepared to sleep on park benches outside a train station called Gunners Lake Green that I'll never forget in Cornwall. You have to be prepared to put presentations together on an evening in London at 12 o'clock and drive to Manchester at 4 a.m. And that was just the way that Kieran and I wanted to drive our business forward and get off the ground. And I think the why is really, really important. And we took that ethos with what was a little bit of funding, but was, more than we could ever have seen in our lifetime without having that support at that time. And we were just relentless. We set a target of trying to hit 350 schools in our first 12 months, and we delivered 359, I think. It was all on free trials, but it allowed us to really break boundaries very, very quickly. And there was no limits. And if anybody said you couldn't do it, you just laughed at them, because there's always a way to do something. It was just people's ignorance of not doing that. And I think the investment journey is about breaking those barriers of your own mindset of being able to actually go and do it and take those risks. And once you do that, the rewards are so great. And I've kind of kept that mantra the whole way through. So once we started to get some traction, we had a couple of tastes through Terry's network of bringing together some potential investors, but ultimately it wasn't right. And I realized that it was about taking the right money at the right time from a very early stage was very, very important. But actually what was more important than money was the network and having people that can support you to grow. I think a lot of founders worry about the dilution levels from day one. So, speaking in commercial terms and business sense, 100% of something that's worth nothing is nothing, but 1% of something that's worth $1 billion is a lot of money. And I was taught that through Terry's mindset very, very quickly. But I believe that will help me both now in my organization of growth and for the next 10 ideas that are written in a book to come after this journey. So we were able to kind of navigate our way through. And about 2018, because of that network, because of everything we've achieved, we then were able to go to an incredible network of friends and family, mainly through Terry, mainly through the initial board. And we were able to raise £800,000. Now, that was a significant amount of capital to help us growth, but really it expelled us into our journey to allow us to create Tootoot Sport with a development team, and also develop the initial workplace product called Stribe, effectively sort of 20 months ago when we were concepting it all that way through. I think in terms of one of my challenges, I think it's all about kind of sharing the challenges for those that are listening. Never underestimate just how much time it takes to answer the questions that are absolutely required to ask for money. You do not have a right to be given investment. You have to deliver the numbers truthfully and be honest at the stage that you're at. And I think equally, from the other side, investors need to be supportive to make sure that all of these questions that can actually burn out founders when they're trying to deliver those metrics are a very sensitive juggling act as you grow a business at the start. But that really propelled us, that really supported us, and that helped us to get an evaluation by the Department for Education. We secured the incredible customers that I mentioned before, and allowed us to grow our team up to an initial 10 at the time, going forwards. Most recently, October 2019, so sort of 14 months on, we'd really focused on the workplace model. My vision for the business is ultimately to be able to drive forward our sales and our growth via our workplace platform, and ultimately then provide our education and sport platform back to children and young people for, if not free, for a reduced fee, so that this CSR organic model pays for itself, so that businesses can also sponsor schools and sports clubs on the journey. So focus became really, really key for us as a business, and we raised £600,000 of sort of, I suppose, seed top-up funding, and that was into our Stride product. We realized we had a great product in workplace, but we needed to develop and bring on more team members to support and growth and trial some opportunities in workplaces and big enterprise organizations, and secure that talent. I think, if I may, Chris, I suppose a key point of that journey was probably the most difficult and hardest time for me as a learning CEO, as a founder, and raising money. We'd actually tried to raise some money between that point, and we tried to raise 1.5 million. And it was from some Northwest funds and investors that were trying to support us at the time. And we actually had a very upsetting and difficult experience, because it resulted in us having to have a term sheet and then pull that term sheet and make some redundancies before Christmas that weren't expected. So that wasn't our fault in that journey, but it was my fault because I wasn't aware of what could happen at the other side of these deals, because everything was a first on that journey. So we actually had to really, dust ourselves off and tighten up. And it was then, and that was so that would have been November 18 to January 19. So we lost about 7 months of what would have been my growth plan to get to October, because we didn't close that particular deal that we've been working on for a number of months. And had I not had the people around me to keep that structure in place, yes, the business was growing, but I really saw this vision for doubling down and going again. And I still look back and say, cool, where could we have been in those 7 months? But one thing it did do is, as I was growing with a small team, I lost a lot of time. As a commercial director with the sales team underneath me and CEO, and therefore raising money, it distracted the business. And I think for anybody that's raising money, you just need to be aware of what those distractions will do, and equally be aware of the plans you put in place. One thing about any business plan that you set is it will always be wrong. It will be wrong because you underachieve it, or it will be wrong because you absolutely smash it, in which case, getting a plan right is the best thing you can do. And it's not easy to do in any sense. And having focus around that and not distracting from what you're trying to achieve will help. But you've got to kiss a lot of frogs to find the princes around until you're in that position where you can actually, choose who you want to kiss at the same time, I think is a fair point.
That's a fair point, yeah. So obviously for yourself, you right now, you're onto potentially another round of investment, but this time you're looking at it for your second product in Stride. How have you approached this round, sort of another round, but for a second product? I guess it's quite a unique situation.
I think it's a really interesting question, Chris, because we're right at the start of that journey. Like I'm literally pulling the deck together. We're starting our round knowing that we'd like to raise in March 2021 as it stands, unless there is any other interest to speed that up. We're seeing some huge excitement in our kind of workplace pipeline opportunity, and I would only pull that forward if the deal aligned and the opportunity was right to do so. But back to my learning, it doesn't take a month or two to start raising money. It takes 9 months to get that over the line, from start to hiring to delivering that plan. So I'm starting that journey now. I'm thinking about who I want on board, and it's not just about money. It's about strategic partners, it's route to market, it's potential M&A acquisition, and elements that can come together as quickly to deliver the growth. So I'm thinking about it in 3 points. I'm thinking about the money that I need, and not over raising, because I think you can sometimes, someone will always say, you can never raise enough money. I challenge that, because at times you end up doing too much with that money that you may not have had. The focus is key. It's about getting that right plan, the right money at the right time. And I want to start that journey by speaking to the right people and demonstrating the growth and the milestones. It's going to be really interesting, because I think this will be a first learning for me. I've grown a single product as a business, and equally we could have introduced Tootoot Sport as a business and Strive as its separate business and gone off for our first round. But I really believe in kind of this bubble and this bigger picture of what we're trying to achieve and this organic growth, being the journey from workplace to student, that Tootoot for life. So I'm looking to understand the challenges early on, which will be, we are revenue generating and we're growing nicely. We are loss making and looking to get to profitability within the next sort of 12 to 24 months, which is great and exciting. But one thing that happens when you have a product with metrics and business numbers is that ultimately sometimes the vision and the value of the future is lost, because you'll be looking at a product of Stripe and seeing what that would be by itself, but then comparing it to what you are doing and what you have done in a smaller market. Whereas we're looking at saying, wow, if we can get to revenue and ARR of X that we are at now, times that by 10, because we've already proven that a school customer value of £800, the same customer in workplace is purchasing at $8,000 a year. There's a 10-fold increase on that just by doing the same things with the same team before I even introduce further talent and further investment. So I'm just considering the dilution elements and thinking about other shareholders, because I have a duty for them who've supported me at that early stage. Some have been with me for 5 years. So is there a transaction point that they would like to trigger at this part of the journey, or stay with us and grow again? And equally about my team. We had a great discussion naturally about kind of talent, recruitment and people in teams. And I care about them deeply. We've had 4 staff on furlough for a period of time now, and they're all 100%. And I will keep them on 100% as long as I can do, because it's even if I could never afford to carry that on, I still would like to feel that I've supported them through this journey because of what they do for me. And it's more than just a job to me. This is a life. This is my passion. And I want the team to be on that journey at this stage as well.
That's great. I mean, I say the growth side of things, and the team side of things, obviously incredibly relevant to me and to what we do at Burnshire. And we speak to a lot of VC, private equity-backed businesses who've trying to grow the teams. They've often made a lot of errors at the beginning of that as well. They've maybe tried to grow too quickly. It can often cause churn. It can cause there to be sort of people, like people leave the business, which is obviously not just an additional cost in recruitment fee or getting someone back on board, but then the training that goes into getting them up to speed. When especially we're trying to grow particularly quickly, can you share some lessons around sort of the next stage of growth and what you'll do differently this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think within that round when we raised the first £800,000, I set a plan. I believed in that plan. I delivered that plan to the best of my ability. But equally, I think I overinvested in some of our resource. I felt I knew what I needed at the time, and I felt I needed some other leadership models, and I may have brought on a couple too many chiefs and not enough Indians, as it were, in that stage, if I may use that example, in terms of the day-to-day parts of the business. And a lot of strategy came from that over a period of time for the future. But there was an element of losing focus for a period of time on how we were growing other parts of the business. And we realized we were trying to do too much because that investment had unlocked lots of wonderful talent that was brought into my journey, my vision, and Tootoot's journey and vision. But perhaps I didn't know how to place some of that talent at the right time, and perhaps didn't structure the business at that stage in the right time. So, that was a challenge for me when I look back, and the learning. And I think, what would I do differently? I think, providing the funding was there, and the ability to do so, I think I would, openly speak out to individuals like yourself and wider teams, just to speed that process up. I used to be very much against recruitment because I used to watch every single pound that went out of the business. But then again, as you grow, you line up what you guys do, which is all that heavy work of sitting, running through all the different challenges and bringing not just individuals, but people and teams and culture together. And I think for me, that's what I would do differently. I would sense check more so with the team I wanted to build. And I think equally, I'm at a stage now where I can give my leaders. I've got a wonderful growing leader called Lucy Harvey, head of marketing. I'm hoping that we can drive forward together, and she's hopefully bought into my vision in the future. And I think she's got some incredible talent alongside Kieran. I'm trying to give a lot more responsibility to sort of say, what would you do in your area? How can we build this, rather than just that single point of responsibility? So I'm building my management team, but I think that it's understanding, as you grow a technology platform, there'll be roles that I've not even heard about yet, only read about from Silicon Valley or other areas, that's just natural for the next stage. So if I know what that is and I can plug that in now, then I can get ahead of whatever that next stage is. So yeah, it will just be considering the art of the possible for the people that come into the team, and making sure that we don't lose any culture of individuals coming in, because you can hire some high flyers, but actually I'm a firm believer that someone that's wants to learn and eager to learn and will take a month to get themselves up to speed can be just as powerful, just as successful, just as profitable in a sales team, for example, as someone that's done it before and knows all the tricks of the trades to cut a few corners and open the black book. But it's always more than that black book. You need that passion, you need that hunger to get over the gates in anything that you're trying to achieve.
That's great. Not to dive too much into recruitment, so we'll move on to everyone's favourite topic, I guess, COVID and the pandemic. How's that impacted the business?
I think it's impacted us because we wanted to launch Strive on the 21st of March, and that was always in the plan from October. And we did that to the day. We were actually 2 days early to the 19th, but we had to soft launch. And I think we were just creating some incredible momentum. I had about £1 million of pipeline at one point that had come from nowhere, that was just, yep. And majority of that went on pause for a stage, just naturally, because point one was, how do we use Microsoft Teams? How do we use Zoom? Get all the day-to-day parts in place, come back to me in a month or two. And literally, I was just saying to you before, I've been on demos since sort of 7 o'clock this morning, and the team have been absolutely flat out helping each other, because suddenly there's been a wake up to staff engagement, staff well-being, pulse checking, people going back into that working environment. And that's what that next wave of technology is going to be, is what we're in. So I suppose from a commercial point of view, like a number of organizations, we've been very, very lucky. We've still sold in education because of our tools and our environment. We're still selling in the workplace because of the tools and the environment. But it's certainly kind of slowed down that momentum that we had, and we're just starting to get that square wheel rolling again as the markets kind of unlock. And I think, having great people around you. So Chris Waterhouse, our new FD, who was brilliant, instrumental in the growth of Mobisoft, a well-known organization. He's joined us as our FD right now. And I've, again, just appreciating talent and what people will do and how people can bring things together. So all of a sudden COVID came into place, and straight away there we were with 12, 18 month and 24 month strategy plans that would keep us in business for 2 years and beyond, and which would work. And every week we were having strategy meetings, myself, Kieran, Lucy and Chris. Are our people okay? Are we checking in with our people? Not too much, not too little. Where can we preserve cash? This is a cash game throughout this process, and save every penny that you can, but it can't affect our customers. Speak to our customers. Don't speak to our customers too much. Just get that right. And it's, there's no right or wrong answer. Nobody's, that I know of in my network have said they've gone through a COVID before to give experience. So we felt our way through, but we were well placed because of the likes of Chris, because of the likes of Kieran in their planning to have that 6 months to think, rather than sort of be at that last month payroll like some organizations unfortunately are.
Yeah, no, that's fair. That's great. One of the things we've been talking about when we're setting up this webinar as well is your journey and transition, really, from founder to CEO. Something that I've never really thought about, to be honest. I've always just automatically thought you're founder, you're CEO, it's fine. But it's obviously been a journey for you. What would you tell your past self about transitioning from founder to CEO and going through that?
I think that's a great question. I think one of my biggest challenges that I have to work on is detail and articulation. So I like to listen to podcasts rather than reading, as an example. And I naturally like to speak to people and be out there and be passionate. And equally, I have to make sure that I'm reading all the detail and the numbers that sometimes it takes a little bit longer to sink in and deliver and get that strategy right. And I think you have to, at a certain point, become very, very clear in what you want to deliver. And you have to be really, really clear in the detail of how you want that to be delivered, because I employ, as I believe, everybody in my business is a lot smarter than I am. And ultimately, that's great. But I have to really up my game when it comes to management and leadership around that, because in a positive way, I have to make sure that I'm aware of the questions that are asked and give those answers in the right way. And I've learned that you can't just be a million mile an hour and say yes to everything. You have to say no, you have to be constructive, and you can't please everybody. And if you try and please everybody in a CEO's role, then actually nobody's going to get on with you. And I've really battled. I'm speaking to my mentors. I'm talking around that as I'm learning. But again, having these great people around me allows me to make those decisions that I think I'm good at. I think I sit well in that leadership role of driving this business forward currently. I think I'd also be aware of, at the right time, there may be better people to take on a better vision as we get it to a stage in which it can grow in that stage. But for now, I think it's just making sure that, again, you're clear, you're focused, and when you speak to people, you remember what you say, what you're delivering, and what you ask of them. People will give 110%, and it may not be their fault if targets aren't hit and deliverables aren't there. It has to all be a team effort and achievable.
That's great. I mean, what has surprised you the most in this journey for you? What's been the most eye-opening thing?
I think the thing that surprised me the most is if you trust and stay focused in a certain specific area and set out to what you're going to deliver and achieve, it can happen in any form. You know, I think it's about actually the only person that's going to go and do this is yourself and the people that follow you on the journey. And I think that was the surprise. You have your lucky moments where you go. And then I remember sitting one time when I first got that seed investment, drove back up to Berwick upon Tweed, and you come out of the university environment of being told and structured on what to do, and suddenly going, well, there's no framework here, there's no timetable, there's no agenda. You now have to go and deliver the dream that you've sold, and there's no easy way around that. That is 12-hour days, 20-hour days, and you just learn to filter those things out quickly. But I think that's what has surprised me a bit more, is just the fact that actually when you really focus on something, what does happen, good and bad, just the outcomes can move and change.
That's great. To be fair, that rings true for just, I think, me leaving university myself. It was like, right, there is no structure. You're led into university, and then it's like, right, on you go deal with it now. That's a great point. Final question for me before we jump into Q&A with the audience. And for the audience, if there's anything you want to ask, please put it into the chat section, Q&A section, so we can ask Michael. But final question: what's next for you? What's next for Tootoot?
Focus, absolute focus. So supporting our customers in education in an organic way and growing that market. Supporting our sport customers as that builds. I think we're a little bit ahead of the game. So when I mentioned the Scottish FA, not to excite Ross too much and everything like that, but ahead of the game. Everyone's taking on this new technology and this vision. So we're working with that to get back to the whole point and stage of that. But Strive is kind of what's going to take this business forward. So I need to make sure that my strategy, my leadership model, and my framework that I put forward to the team is what we all want to do. I don't want to just sort of say, this is the way we're going to go if it's the wrong way to go. I want everyone bought into that vision, and then I'll drive through with my followers. So I think that's what's next. It's focusing, it's hitting some milestones and some revenue numbers, because, great impact, great excitement, but to get to the next stage, we've got to show what Strive can do in its early days, even though we're early, but I'm excited for the future. And I've got to think about those next stages. I think that's, personal stages of growth and what the team wants to do and where we are at on our journey with education and with Strive. Do both come together, like I mentioned, or is there opportunities to plug different parts into different places? That's what's next on the agenda. But ultimately reaching that Series A round in March, if not before, is the kind of end goal of so what.
Yeah. Great, and obviously from our side of things, we're keen to give Strive a run. I think we're sorting that out within Bernstein as well. I've used
brilliant, thank you.
Products in the past, but it wasn't really successful for me. I felt like I was driving my team to use it. So hopefully that engagement with Strive will keep the information flowing to me in particular. But yeah, questions coming through. One that was a preemptive one that was asked. Do you have any tips for a startup that's trying to scale a dev team from 5 to 20 in 6 months? They've noted as well, whilst in stealth mode, but if you've got advice in stealth or out stealth, that'd be great to know.
Well, I think we could probably both answer that. I think you might be better placed than me. I think if Kieran was here, he would give you the best answer, because he's incredible at managing his team. I think structure. Kieran is incredibly structured and detailed, and measures and monitors everything. And he just takes the time to do it. You know, we all have the same hours in the day. Whether he's got 2 people working with him, whether he's got 100, he would still get the same outcome because he's planned, he's prepped, and he's put the structure in place. We use agile sprints, so we do 2-week sprints, and Kieran is relentless in making sure that they are either delivered or they're flagged very, very early to me. If I'm looking at a new feature to sell to a customer, I know well ahead of that time if it's not coming as to why, so I'm not surprised. I think it's, you know, just being prepared for the culture of putting everybody together, and making sure that the 20 people that join the 5 are fully aware about the journey. I think one of the things that Kieran does really, really well is he makes me explain the product we're trying to sell back to the team, my team and his team, because, you know, there is a disconnect when you're looking at code and a screen to build out that team that they're building this tool that does something. But until you bring that to life with how a customer can use it, I think whether it's 1 or whether it's 20, there may be some disconnects. But Chris, I might hand that back to you if I may to kind of
use coaching. Really, it'd be really easy if you just work with us. It'll get the growth won't be a problem. We'll focus on retention first, and then fill the team out and get the culture right. It's simple answer.
I'm gonna put it better myself. There you go.
Yeah. One of the questions that popped up is from Laura. She's a great backstory. Kudos, Michael. Can you elaborate on how you try to maintain your culture and avoid churn as you scale teams?
You know, that's another great question. I think at certain points I've probably lost incredible people as part of the journey at the different stages, and that would have been a mixture of the business required those stages of growth that couldn't maintain certain parts of that culture, and I've probably not got it right trying to integrate or trying to please everybody. Back to that point that I said, I think you know, ultimately it's back to that being clear and employees wanting to join the journey as much as the journey that they're going on. I think there needs to be a clear outset from the start, which I might not have got right at times when bringing individuals on to say, this is what's expected, this is where we're going, and there's the milestones, because everyone believes in that vision and journey. So I think it's you know, I would look at myself there and say, I absolutely in the next stage would have to get that right if I was to double up the team. I think, you know, we've had our ups and downs, our challenges. We've had teams grow up to 20, back to 18, 12, 14. It's always been fluctuating on the business growth. So it's as new people come in, they naturally bring new skill sets and new conversations, and not everybody likes everybody. So it's about being clear in what's expected and hoping that those relationships also support themselves.
So obviously a mixture of people watching this. So what are your priorities that you're looking for in a new investment partner as you approach the next funding round?
3 points probably. Money is always the needed part. A network, because right now I'm very much focused on go-to-market strategy with Stripe and working with organizations and businesses. So half the conversation is it's who you know and how you can get to at least open those doors. Like we said, when you heard about our tool, you thought fantastic, that may work for us. It was, but had we not talked openly about this webinar, I may not have got there. So it's about that network. And thirdly, trust to let us go and do what we're doing. You know, we've grown this business very, very quickly, significantly over the last 3 or 4 years by getting on it, doing it, trying some things, failing, and getting up on a Saturday and Sunday and starting again and dusting ourselves off and growing. So I think, you know, what we've had from our investors the whole way through, and the likes of GMCA and GC Angels that were in the last round of VCs, is trust. They even if we've missed certain numbers or over-delivered on certain numbers, they believe in that vision and getting there, and have always been, have you thought of this? Have you tried that? So I think, you know, a partner is what I'd be looking for along the journey, and someone that could bring some learnings to help speed that up in a similar market or a similar framework is obviously extremely useful.
Great. Someone else said, Michael, great business, congratulations. Interested to hear how you developed and grew your relationships with your own business partner / friend. What challenges, learnings can you share for everyone else starting out on that journey, particularly in the early years?
I've been very lucky. I think if you ask Kieran, he'll tell you the truth, but I feel like we get asked that question a lot. I mean, we literally, we left our girlfriends on a Sunday evening and we returned back at Friday night when they were in bed, and we were in hotels, we were all over the country, and we're building this product, and we just because of our skill sets, we respected one another. You know, I will never challenge Kieran's co-founder and CTO and will leave me to make the main decisions, but I will always ask Kieran on every single question. I will always sense check what I'm doing. And that's just the way that we've done it the whole way through. That's not to say that if Kieran wants to go a different direction, I want to go a different direction. There's some wonderful conversations and some heated moments, but it's always about the why to get to the same goal. And I think it's just being really, really clear on what your partner or team skill sets are. And if you haven't got those skills, go and get them or learn them. And if you have similar crossover skills, then just make sure that someone leads on them. But I think because we've been very complimentary of each other, we've been able to kind of go on that journey so far. So I've been lucky.
Someone else said, thanks for the story. It's absolutely motivating for us all. I could see your strategy and your plan. What about teamwork in your organization? Does that drive you? Does that drive you and you are the only one deciding everything?
Again, that's back to the point of, I suppose, my self-reflection of trying to make that balanced. I think, you know, ultimately I have to keep my head down and drive forward the growth of the business and looking forwards. And sometimes you can't look back and you require on your team to drive that teamwork. And I think it's, again, being really clear within a group of individuals and your team of it's okay for you all to help in that journey as well and grow that teamwork and grow that delivery. I think there's certain things you just have to take on at certain parts of the journey and drive forward. And, you know, there is a balance in the growing journey of startup. There's a, you know, the thought of a startup for some people in that growth journey is more exciting than actually being in the startup. You know, a startup can have excitement as it grows, but equally you have a duty to grow that business and get that off the ground to be sustainable. I think, you know, that sometimes there is teamwork elements and balances that do have to give when there's certain times of pressure, but equally at those points, I need to make sure in my organization that I'm reflecting on that and stop the organization to have some teamwork and have some fun. So I think it's a balance of employees flagging if they feel able to, that there needs to be more teamwork in my particular organization. That's how I would see that. But I equally need to make sure I stop and sense check in a busy world of selling, growing and driving that forward, that teamwork is needed to kind of remotivate as well.
Great. This question is coming from someone I know really well and also works in the EdTech world as well. So Andy's asked, you speak passionately about your company and products. How do you remain objective about your business decisions when you're so personally involved and excited?
I think that comes back from my mentoring. I think I'm just a passionate person in everything I talk about, and it's what motivates me and drives me. But ultimately a pound's a pound, and I'm growing a business and I have shareholder responsibilities. So I think the caps kind of just have to switch, or I've had to learn to switch those caps. I mean, I would love to be able to sit and strategize all day, and equally I would hate to be able to sit and strategize. I'd like to get out there and grow that forward. So I think it's back to just understanding what hat's required at the right time. Again, we're all perfect. We'll all miss strategic opportunities. You know, we'll all deliver brilliant strategies. We'll all think about that, but it's ultimately the kind of focus and the timing and the hats that you wear from me.
Right. No, great. I think we'll looks like we've wrap it up there. Obviously, great session, 45 minutes there. Some good great content there. Thanks, Michael. Really appreciate it. Thanks for everyone who joined us today. We'll obviously be recording this and sharing it as well, so you can go back on things and look over the things. Feel free to obviously reach out to myself. I'm sure Michael will be happy to receive any further questions going forward as well. Reach out to us, ask us anything that you need, and go and enjoy the sun. I think we've still got a good amount of it left, and I'm absolutely sweltering in this flat. So thanks a lot, everyone. We'll end it there, and enjoy your evenings. Thanks again, Michael. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye. Bye all.